All right, this is the next day. Um, I I wanted to. I forgot, because I lose my train of thought when I'm speaking sometimes, especially when I'm trying to cover a lot of random bases and interconnect them. But the whole reason I brought up that movie Crash was to bring up a lot of times black men's, overreaction to a particular incident, which is essentially the camel that broke the straw, or the straw that broke the camel's back. Look at me getting dyslexic. The straw that broke the camel's back, um, because of things that continually happen, where white men overstep their boundaries. White men go out of their way, namely white police officers go out of their way to antagonize or disrespect black men in some day. And sometimes it's not even just the cop. It's again the society as a whole. You know, little incident of disrespect after disrespect after disrespect. And, a lot of times you'll see black men react like Terrence Howard did when he went and he got the gun and he was basically, you know, borderline about to commit, murder homicide against, the cop, the main protagonist of the movie, right? And, I've said this before, when you got white folks out there who will, let me back up. Like, when you look at, um, let me think, the ways in which black men are collectively disrespected by, this white society, you know, versus white men. Now, white men do have their internal problems. I do think that there is a throwing of white men underneath the bus, even as it pertains to, when they have their nuclear families, they're always made to look like buffoons on sitcoms and everything. But that's not coming from the black community. That's coming from the white community. But I'm saying the way that white men can collectively disrespect black men and make us look like a bunch of cowards and a bunch of bitches in the eyes of our own women and children, black men can't do that to white men. You have a couple incidences of individual, disrespect. I've seen, black guys punk out a white guy right in front of his girlfriend or his wife and make him look like a bitch. I've definitely seen that. Um, but at the collective level, no. And usually, like, when it does happen, the white guy, he's got a superiority complex and he's not on the, socioeconomic or intellectual level of said individual black man, or he's not built like the black guy, or he's the black guy's just got to be in the general category of, being a desirable individual, but he thinks that his whiteness is going to overcompensate for that, and, they get into it, and then the black guy just berates him to death. I've seen situations like that. And those shits are hilarious because it's like you really came to the table half cocked, didn't you? Right? But when it comes to the overall structure of society, um, when it comes to black men's interaction with law enforcement, I mean, it just comes down to one main simple thing. Men are supposed to be the protectors, and women are supposed to be dependent on men across the board, across racial groups. So when you have a police officer, or when you constantly see on television white police officers manhandling, disrespecting, you see, unjustified shoots, not the justified ones. I know that there's a lot of white people that try to conflate the two. They try to come through and, they'll jump on all the videos, of, black criminal pulls out gun, shoots at cop shoots him, and then they're like, Black Lives Matter in the comment section. It's like nobody's marching for that, you know. But then when they see, they'll like ignore the video where, black guy's running away and get shot in the back 8 times, or a video where the black guy is told, can you get your wallet for me, please? And he turns around to go and gets the wallet, and then the officer dumps the magazine on him. I mean, you know, it seems that, and it puts white people in a real funny position because they really want to defend cops when cops are up against black people. But when cops are up against white people and they do the same thing to white people that they do to black people, then you see the divide, in the community. Or I'll give some people some credit, because I've seen comments where, I remember when that black cop punched that white girl who slapped him in Florida when they were escorting her out the stadium, and he punched her back. There was a bunch of white guys in the comment section like, "Bitch gets what she deserves. That's equality right there, right? She wants gender equality. There it is, right?" So, you know, not everybody's on the hate train or the racial tip. You know, also, this recent situation where a white girl got punched in the head by she was like a white. I don't know if she was a teenage girl or she was underage. She was probably about 20, and she was in Wildwood, and she was arrested for public intoxication, I'm assuming, or being underage and consuming alcohol. And her and the cop got into it, and then the cop started like punching her in the head, and she's just cursing up a storm. And if you go to those videos and you look at the comment sections, there's a lot of white people that suddenly it's like, wait a minute, he's gone too far. Suddenly they want to question the officer because it's a white girl. But then you got other people, that fuck it, I'll give them credit. They're more consistent. They see, they're like, well, if she would only comply, they're saying the same exact thing they would be saying in the comment section, for black folks. It really depends on who you're talking to or who's writing the comment, but I do think that there's a general consensus where you have the people that consistently support law enforcement no matter what they do, even if it's wrong. Then you got the people who consistently question law enforcement and think all cops are suspect and pigs and pieces of shit. And then you got the people that in my from what I see, it's like they don't have a problem with cops fucking anybody up until it's white people who are the ones getting fucked up. Then all of a sudden they got a problem. Then all of a sudden they want an investigation. Then all of a sudden they want to question, what happened, what went down. We want the details. Wait till all the facts come out. But when it's a black person, the presumption of guilt is automatic. What'd the black guy do? What'd he do wrong? As though there aren't cops out here who, don't have power trips and daddy issues, and they were the school bully or they got bullied, and now they're projecting and transferring that onto everybody else that they come across. Maybe they are racist, maybe they're mad that their wife cheated on them with a black guy, and so now every black guy they pull over, they project that crap on them. It's all type of stuff that can go on psychologically. Cops are people, and they can be flawed. But the issue for black men is every time the cops go out here and they overstep their bounds and fuck us up and got us sprawled on the ground, and and again, this has been going on since the end of slavery, where black men constantly look like some bitches, made to look like bitches, made to, be embarrassed in front of their women. And, it's like there becomes a breaking point where it should be no wonder why you see what you saw in Dallas or why you see what you saw in New Orleans. You know what I mean? Like that brother that shot up the police in New Orleans and whatnot. One of the cops he killed was black. He wasn't crazy. If you go and you listen to his YouTube video, he knew exactly what the fuck he was doing. He was angry. And again, both of these individuals were veterans. They were people who served their country. That never seems to come up in the conversation when white people want to talk about these militant black people and how they served their country, right? Again, like I told you, they don't have no problem giving black people guns as long as we fighting white folks' wars. Then it's perfectly okay for us to have guns. But a lot of times black men, they go and they serve their country and then they get treated like shit, like the brothers that came back from World War II or the brothers that came back from Vietnam. They start looking at the world differently. That's if they make it back. They're like, man, I done all this and sacrificed all this and I come back and I'm still treated like shit. Ain't this a bitch? And then the embarrassment, in front of black men's women and children, that pushes some people over the edge. And that's why you see them react like what you see with Terrence Howard. You see these interactions with police officers, and black guy will be pulled over. And I don't doubt that some black guys are just they too quickly pull the race card and they jump up and they snap. But like I said, a lot of times it may not even have to do with the police. It's just that's the straw that broke the camel's back. It's just one more incident. Maybe his white boss is fucking with him. Maybe there's another incident that he has with the township or whatever. And then here comes this cop, or it's the third time this week that he's gotten pulled over. And cops can easily push a black man's buttons. To where he just blacks out on a cop. you know. And then next thing you know, the situation gets escalated, and the black man ends up getting shot and ends up dead, right? Because he was yelling, or he was upset. And I'm saying there's plenty of videos where black guys. I remember there was a video where the cop pulled over a black guy. He was an ex, drug dealer, and the cop brings it up, and he's like, "Motherfucker, I did my time. Like, the fuck you want from me?" You know what I mean? Like, he was mad, And then the cop was actually sitting there saying, "Yeah, I pulled you over because your music was too loud on the highway." The highway. And luckily the dude knew the law. He was like, highway. He was like, there's no sound ordinance on the highway. The sound ordinance is in a residential neighborhood. I mean, you can pull up the video. A drug dealer curses out cop or whatever. It comes right up. That cop pulled him over for bullshit. Your music was too loud on the highway. That was what the officer said. But see, you get white folks, they like to deny that shit like that goes on. And like to, act like, the black guy, shouldn't be, he's not justifiably angry. Your music was too loud on the highway. That's your excuse for pulling me over? Why don't you just say what it is? You fucking followed me, you ran my tags, right? You saw my name came up. You see I got a criminal history, and you're like, oh, let me make the easy bust. I bet he's got paraphernalia in the car. Even if he had drugs or was still selling drugs, it wouldn't be in the nice car. It wouldn't be in the car that he's riding around flossing with. No, it's going to be in the hoopty. So I'm saying like that's just shitty policing, at that point. Riding around in a big flashy expensive car, and then we got the dope in the tires. Like, are you it's like you really think they're that dumb? But again, it just becomes a point where, brothers will get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they'll snap and they'll lash out, because that every time a cop or police, shit on a black guy, it makes black men look weak in the eyes of their women and in the eyes of their children. And then when white folks jump up and they're like, well, you need to control the aspects of your community because your problems are spilling into our community. I'm like, how can that be done? They're disenfranchised because, again, white people control the whole occupational hierarchy and businesses and jobs and everything else, right? They've been controlled that since, the end of slavery. And then every time black people established a thriving black community, be it Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Rosewood, or, Elaine, Arkansas, or OC, Florida, whatever, with July Perry, right? There's always some false accusation of rape, and then the white people went in there and used that as justification to burn the town down. Like where would the black community of Tulsa, Oklahoma be if there was no massacre of Tulsa, Oklahoma? Right? All that generational wealth literally just evaporated. Right? And then white people say, oh, well, the black people are just fucked up. As I try to tell black people, I'm like, they don't go in there and try to burn down, matriarchal, role reversed, fatherless home communities. They don't go in there and try to burn that down. They just go in there and gentrify it. When it's an intact patriarchal community, they got to burn that sucker down. So when, again, the problems spill out of the black community and spill into the white community, I do not shed a tear. I hate the fact that that becomes the representation of, what we are and who we are. But I'm like, these are problems that have been created and fostered by the system of white supremacy. It's just that simple. You can say blame Whitey all you want. These are the facts. I mean, from the Tuskegee experiments and inoculating a bunch of black men with syphilis to take home back to their wives, to redlining and blockbusting, to the denial of loans, to the dumping of drugs and narcotics in the black community. White folks had a hand in all of that. And then they want to look at the current conditions of the black community and say, oh, you're just blaming Whitey. Because Whitey is guilty. I mean, the facts are there. The history is there. But, in terms of, the disenfranchisement economically speaking, and then the constant, reminder to, black women and children of the weakness of black men because you keep fucking with them. There's no, black men hold no authority in the black community. It's not like they stand up on the mountaintop and say, I decree, and then everybody falls in line and listens, even when it comes to the black elders. I mean, you got that song by, what's the artist's name? YMB or something like that, where his response to J. Cole, 1985, and in that song he lays out about, who are you to criticize me? We in the same boat. You got nothing to show for it. That's how black youth feel about black elders. It's like, motherfucker, at the end of the day, I got to go and beg a white man for a job. I can't even go to you for a job, and yet you're trying to tell me about how I should behave and how I should adhere to your codes of conduct and the standards that, I mean, you don't even establish. You just throw the Bible and white Jesus at somebody and say, well, the book says you should be behaving like this. But yet there's no patriarchy. There's no safe space. There's no place that, I can go to you to get what I need for my survival as, black elders. And pretty soon that responsibility is going to fall on, men like me. It's going to fall on my generation the older I get. So, it's like, black men, they definitely, should we just sit around and wait for white people to stop being racist? No, because that's not going to happen. Again, racism, group economics, it's all about survival. It's all about, us living on a finite planet with finite resources and them, funneling a disproportionate amount of resources in their direction by practicing tribalism and group economics. That is what white supremacy is. So, I'm just saying, when it comes to, that level of disrespect, it's like, damn, like, I mean, why would a black woman feel safe? And I've said this before. Why would a black woman feel safe or protected by a black man when a black man can't even protect himself from white people when white people so choose to be racist and exercise that racism? Can't protect ourselves economically, can't even protect ourselves physically, can't even protect ourselves from the very group of people who are, sworn to serve and protect. Can't even protect ourselves from when they act like an asshole. Who's watching the watchmen? Right? So, this becomes a significant problem for us. and creates all type of social issues for us, and I don't think it's something to consider. Like I said, I don't think most white men are going to take kindly to this video. If they even get through the whole thing. But to those, and it's only a handful, but I'll take the questions at face value and act like it's a real question or you're being serious and make a video on it and cover all the bases and even anticipate, questions after the question. Because usually a lot of people try to bait you into a corner by asking you, well, what do you think of this and what do you think of that? Blah 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 blah. Aha, right? And then they just hit you with a whole bunch of questions, because they've already had their mind, made up about certain things. It's like a Jordan Peterson type of intellectual tactic. If you watch a lot of debates, you'll see people do that. You get people to define things. And then you break down, them defining things, right? So a lot of times when black people are asked the question, well, what is white privilege or what is white supremacy? Even I'll acknowledge they give the shittiest answer ever. And it's real easy to give the best answer ever. All you have to do is focus on wealth and power and tribalism. That's all you have to focus on. If you focus on those things, if you stay steady to the concept that they are not going to do what is not in their collective best interest, then the answers are the questions are already answered. There's no getting around that. People are tribal, and that's what people do. People look out for their own. That's what people do. We do not live in a society that is a meritocracy. When you have all sorts of, nepotism going on, and I'm saying, nepotism, that's something that even white people have to deal with. White people know other white people who simply got the job because they're related to the person that holds the position and holds the cards to give out the opportunity. So, it's not a stretch to say that, races of people do that, for, their race or their ethnicity or their subgroup of race, right? I expect an Irish man to look out for another Irish man before he looks out for an Italian or a German, and vice versa. That's what goes on. That's how ethno communities are created. And then there's the broader ethno community, which is, the white race or, other various racial groups. Chinatown is for the Chinese. Koreatown is for the Koreans. Little Cuba is for the Cubans. Right? And that's what they have. The problem for black people is black people drank the Kool-Aid of multiculturalism and, the belief that everybody else is going to share. Black people want everybody else to share because they don't have shit. So it behooves black people to say, yeah, we believe and subscribe to multiculturalism. Everybody else who doesn't want to subscribe to multiculturalism, most certainly not with black people, because it means that they would have to give something up to bring black people to the level that they're at. And what they like to do is just jump up and say, oh, well, it's all about hard work. Right? Even the Asians. When you got Asians running around, the whole affirmative action for, education and getting black people, able to get into, schools and universities, and, the disproportionality of them going to shitty schools and, schools not having the same funding. So you do have a lot of people who don't have the same, or can live up to the same educational expectations. And so, the affirmative action was designed to, even that out. And then what you see, as opposed to it being specifically for black people, which is what it should have been, which is why the whole civil rights movement took place, because it wasn't a bunch of Cambodians and Indians and Nepalese and Japanese and Chinese and Koreans out there marching in the streets with black folks. Black people were essentially out there by themselves along with the handful of, liberal-minded, and I mean true liberal-minded white folks. Asians and Indians don't have a history of 300, 400 years of slavery in this country, and yet they're the first ones in line with their hands out when it comes to anything labeled for minorities. Anything that you see labeled for minorities was originally supposed to be designated and designed for black people specifically, but calling it minority was a way of watering it down. That way black people don't receive any of the things that they should have received to rectify the transgressions of the past. So now you got women in there, and I bet you sooner or later they're going to try to make gays their own category. So gays are now a minority, you know. Um, aside from, Indians, Asians, Hispanics, whatever. I'm not saying that any of these other groups haven't been discriminated against. The Chinese were definitely discriminated against in California, and many of their communities were burnt down just like the black community. But do pound for pound, do they have the same historical situation as black people? Hell no. Hell no. Black people have been used as the fear mongering group, to basically get poor and working class whites, to feel that that was the group that was the boogeyman that they always had to worry about. Aside from the fact that Asians only make up like people of East Asian descent, they only make up like 3% of the population. And then when you want to talk about like people of Indian descent, they're like the other like additional 2 or 3% to bring the total American Asian population to something like 5 or 6%. So it's a very small population compared to a much larger population, which is more than double the size, which is the African American population, which stands at about 14 to 15% of the population, supposedly. You know. Um, so, what was I going to say? I'm just saying, these are the issues. The fact that you have a police force that is 93% Caucasian, and black people are just subject to that. That's white privilege right there. It's designed that way. You don't have black officers patrolling and policing white communities, and I'm not saying that you should, but by the same token, why do you have majority white police policing, predominantly black communities in the percentages that they are? The people who police the community should be, of the community, not necessarily from that specific community, but I'm saying they should be of the racial makeup of the community. You should see significantly higher numbers. That would eliminate a lot of the, racial tensions and bullshit that you see going on, between blacks and whites and in law enforcement and all that stuff. That would resolve a lot of that stuff. Because it would be very, very difficult to pull the race card in that situation. Although you do have black men out here who have a very self-hating, Uncle Ruckus, coonish mentality, where they see themselves as above other black people. I kind of put Sheriff Clark in that category. Although I remember when he did the NRA speech and he brought up Frederick Douglass and he tried to point out some things, I was like that was a decent moment for him. But generally speaking, it is much more popular for him to go up there and speak like he's a white man. Aside from the fact that he has a white wife. White people, they love black people that will go up there and talk like they're a what do you want to call it? Like they're a racist white man. They love that shit. Yeah, you tell him, see, you can't say he's racist because he's black, even though he's espousing, racist thought. And it's like, white folks are the ones that came up with the term Stockholm Syndrome. And there's a lot of black people in America that have just that, Stockholm syndrome, literally. You know, they identify with their oppressor. So anyway, I'll just make this a part 2, because if I add this on to the video that I already did, which is already over an hour long, it'll be too long. So anyway, that's my video. Again, I'm going to put this underneath New Jersey gun laws. That's my video. New Jersey gun laws out.